The following episode contains or may contain spoilers. So if you're spoiler sensitive, maybe beware.
Yeah, you sensitive people.
Get out.
No, get in. All right, welcome to the Fantom Zone. 3 fans, 1 podcast, and a sea of comics. I'm Noah.
Kayla.
And a Jared.
And a Jared.
And a Jared.
We just found one.
Yeah, it's me saying my name. It's always awkward. It's like that scene in Talladega Nights where he doesn't know what to do with his hands.
I love that
I'm a
movie.
Jared.
Yeah, so we're back. So as you guys hopefully saw on social media, we are going to be releasing episodes bi-weekly. We have a lot of personal obligations that we need to do, and we also want to make sure that we have the best podcast possible to you. So that's why we decided to work more on the actual episodes and then release them when we can. Because doing it weekly...
Let's be honest, Noah. Noah's going to prison. Okay. Let's just be honest.
Oh, no.
Yeah.
I don't want to go.
It was for first degree aggravated loitering and
Aggravated loitering.
Yep.
Yeah,
Serve your time.
Yeah, so that is the schedule from now on. So you're listening to this on Wednesday. We will not have one the Wednesday following, but then Wednesday after. So we ain't going anywhere. We're just taking some time to get you guys the episodes. So that's all the stupid announcy stuff.
Yeah, plus go listen to our backlog of amazing episodes.
Yeah,
you know?
We have over 50 other episodes. And also, just so you guys know, on our Patreon, we are releasing weekly episodes. They're on topic. It's things that we talk about that we don't normally talk about on the podcast, and we release those weekly. So if you still want a fix of this podcast, you can go on over there, subscribe to Patreon, and still get those episodes. So
Huzzah!
Yeah, you piece of shit. You do. Okay, sorry. That was too much. I've had a lot of coffee. I'm sorry. Let's just do the episode.
And I'm the one going to prison? Really?
Yeah. Yeah, because you don't have a good lawyer.
All right. So this episode is our top 10 of when villains broke good. So not Breaking Bad, but they broke good. So
Sometimes and irregularly, others for permanent.
True. Very true.
That's right. Like, I think that's an important thing to emphasize because I feel like there's a lot of very punctilious people in the comic book community, and they're like, well, that's an alternate version. But we're kind of doing, okay, this can be a permanent change, like a new status quo. This can be like a momentary joining of the good guys, or this can even be like an alternate version, because that's kind of the appeal of those anyway. It's like, oh, this Joker doesn't want to kill babies. Well, that's wonderful.
Accurate. Yeah, so, I mean, we thought it would be fun to do, and, instead of doing, the top 10 of when heroes went bad, because, I mean, it's kind of the same story all the time. So, villains going good, they can do it frequently, infrequently, forever, or alternate versions, like they said. So,
and that good guy thing is way more common, honestly. It's not that that's not interesting, but it's half of every Superman story is Superman found Periwinkle kryptonite and now he hates the media or something like that.
Yeah, and then what are we going to talk about? Scott Summers still being bad or an asshole?
My poor Scott.
No, he's good. He's good now. He's all good.
Okay,
if anything, he was bad and he recently got good, so he should be on our list. But we'll see if that happens.
Okay. I just added him to mine.
I was gonna say Kayla's changing her list.
Top 10 times Scott Summers went good when he was bad.
Yeah, she's
my whole list
Scott
is just
Summers.
Scott and Loki.
Yeah.
All right. So do you want to jump right into it, guys?
Sure.
All right.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
All right. We'll have Jared kick it off with his number 10.
Okay, so I started a bit obscure. Okay, it's if you're a Gail Simone fan, or you're a Secret Six fan, this is probably not strange to you. But like my number 10 pick is the Secret Six when they liberated a slave island. Okay, this is Secret Six number 10. And the reason I think this is cool and worthy of mention is that so if you don't know the Secret Six, they're a lot like Suicide Squad, but they don't work for Amanda Waller, right? So it's just it's like they're like these rogues or like bad guys that are kind of doing good, kind of still doing bad. It's characters like Deadshot and Bane and Catman and stuff like that. But anyway, so for the most, like in the series, they're just kind of like, they're like paid to do like hits or kidnapping or something like that, and it's really hard to classify them as good in any respect. But it's in this sort of storyline where they get hired to be the security at what turns out to be a slave island, like a massive prison kind of thing, that they overturn it. And it's this moment where these anti-heroes, like begrudgingly, it's like, oh, you guys can't hide. You're all good guys now. At least in that moment. Which I think is cool because like a lot of times with the anti-heroes, like it really, they always try to mitigate like the goodness that they do. In this case, it's funny because the team actually fights amongst themselves about like whether they're going to save these slaves or not. Eventually everybody comes around and it's a fantastic moment.
Nice. I feel like, those people in Sinister Six have like a set of morals that they will do and then things that they won't. So if it's like slavery, no, get rid of it. Killed like a child, no way. Assassinate a corrupt politician, of course. Point the gun. Where is it?
Absolutely. No, that's true. Then goodness is very contextual. And in this case, like, and this issue also happens to have Wonder Woman in it. It's just really cool.
Cool.
But anyway, yeah, she shows up.
I like it. All right.
Yeah.
So my number 10, I decided to do Clayface from DC Rebirth. So,
That's so weird.
He's technically good now. So after it's really confusing. Like I thought it was an interesting take on the character because he's always been kind of just sad and kind of just like this monster on the loose that's misunderstood, but for some reason can't stop being bad. So like his particles are always being used to brainwash people too, which has happened multiple times. So anyway, after he's re-released from Arkham and he's, transformed into Clayface again, Batman and Batwoman actually offer him the opportunity to join a team that Batman was assembling. So this is where the Detective Comics team comes in, where there's like spoiler orphans in it. Tim Drake's in it, where Tim Drake dies. And Batwoman's in it.
Just a minor note there. Tim Drake was murdered.
Yeah. So Batman believed that he was given an opportunity, like he could give him an opportunity to turn his life. And Clayface, tired of his life as a criminal, he took Batman's offer. But during Night of the Monster Men, Clayface was a member of the team called in by Batman, and he was kind of conflicted with how exactly to do good. And one of the biggest feats that he was able to do with being good is he actually split himself into hundreds of police officers. So he made himself into 100 police officers to actually evacuate the entire city. Whoa. Because during Night of the Monster Men, this big virus was released and all these monsters were attacking. So he started finding his footing. And so, I don't know, it was kind of cool to see him conflicted with how to be good when most of the time he was conflicted on how to be bad. If that makes sense. So, like, he's very malleable, if you could say.
Something tells me that that's going to be like popular our lists, which is like, it's just like their relationship to being good, no matter what, is just going to be complicated.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, it's kind of complicated. I mean, and there was this whole thing of like where he kind of died, but he didn't really die. So we'll see if he stays good. I don't know if they're bad when he comes back.
There have been like 1,000 Clayfaces at this point, like people who played him or taken on that role. So you could, like, one of them had to turn good at least once. You know what I mean?
That's true. Very true.
kind of it reminds me of like way back when we were doing our favorite villains, and I did Riddler when he was good for like a couple of years. He really tried.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Mm-hmm. Yeah. What's your number 10, Kayla?
Yeah. So I have Punisher written here, and in parentheses I have in his own special way because on the surface, he's not great, not the best, because he does murder anyone who disagrees or who he deems as worthy of his bullets. Luckily, those people obviously are limited to hopefully mainly like pedophiles, drug cartel members, mobsters, murderers, that type of
bad
stuff.
Guys.
Exactly. So, Punisher tends to only kill bad guys. There have been a couple moments where he would like team up with Spidey or Daredevil, and then they'll be like, okay, I'll join you on this, but you cannot kill a person. And then he'll try really hard to do that. And he will for a couple of pages or issues, depending on how lucky that superhero is. He eventually always kind of reverts to shooting people again, but he can temporarily, because he is only willing to kind of kill the baddies, kind of turn that off, which I like. Sometimes
he puts his safety on.
Are you just reading Noah's like bio? I can't remember. I get that. He won't kill people for very long, but he'll stay. Anyway.
I can turn it off.
I mean, it's very true. Like, and I think that's funny. Like, don't forget, like, Punisher. He's not just like this anti-hero. He started out as just a straight up bad guy. Mm-hmm. And I think people forget that, and I think we're going to see that on the list a lot too. Which is that like a great way to enter in some new hero into like any universe is to like the reformed bad guy thing. It's sort of like the bad guy attacks our hero for whatever reason, whatever their motivation is. And then, the good guy stops him and then realizes, oh, hey, you have good motivations. I want to be a friend. And then let's
go get some ice cream.
Yeah.
Well, I also redirect those motivations into a non-murdery way.
Yeah. I think it's always funny, though, that like with Punisher specifically, it's like he's definitely useful and he's great. But then it's like, Spider-Man, why are you teaming up with a guy? Okay, you don't like murder. You're teaming up with a guy where his main weapon is guns. Come on.
But it's not like there's a superhero team up version of Tinder where Spider-Man like swiped right on it. It's just they end up like, oh, you were fighting the Kingpin too? Okay, well, I guess I'll punch this guy in the. Are you shooting him? Did you just shoot that guy? Like that's
They're like looking for group. Like there's an app.
Yeah. In the best case scenario, he acts as like a Jason Todd, where he's like, fine, in the presence of my like non-killing family, I'll shoot them in the kneecaps. Okay, not the face.
Yep. All right, number 9.
Okay, so here's the thing. A lot of cases we have villains that like just sort of like temporarily go good because like something like Comet's like going to destroy the city, so they're like, well, I guess I'll stop robbing these children or whatever.
I don't want to die either.
Yeah. But sometimes, and I think this is really cool, what we get is a sort of long, protracted story. And so my number 9 is, and this is as infamous as famous, is Dr. Octopus from the Superior Spider-Man phase. This started in Amazing Spider-Man. Number 700. I know. But people are very skeptical. Now, there's a couple things. One, people hated this originally. Adam Slott, the writer, got death threats over it. Yep. It's a bit extreme. But here's what's funny is that the quality of the writing, this is sort of like the Jane Thor stuff where the quality of the writing was so good, it kind of won over the community. And there are more people out there now. I mean, just sort of the general consensus seems to be that it's like, oh, this was actually really good. And here's why. And this is why the villains turning good can be really interesting. If you don't know the story, it's sort of convoluted, but the basic idea is that Dr. Octopus switched bodies with Peter Parker. His body, Octopus's original body, was dying, and so Peter, the what we think happens, obviously Spider-Man's okay, but what we think happens is that Pete's soul or mind or whatever goes into Doc Ock's body, and it dies. That which leaves Otto Octavius in Spider-Man's body, and he takes on the role for Spider-Man for a long time. I mean, I think maybe it had been 2 years or something like that.
People were so mad.
Yeah.
But they were so angry. Well, here's the thing. I mean, like, but what this did, and what's interesting is Dr. Octopus learns how hard it is to be Spider-Man, and not just hard, how the moral sacrifices that took place. So once we see Dr. Octopus take on the Otto, because he doesn't just go evil and using that body, he tries to be a better Spider-Man. So he assumes the role, and then so a lot of the initial stuff is him brutalizing criminals. Like he punches, I think it's the Scorpion, and rips his jaw off, literally. And it dawns on Otto, oh shit, he's always been pulling his punches. He could have knocked my head off at any time. And so you talk about villains being foils for the hero. This story is that concept on steroids. We learn so much about Peter Parker because we get to see Otto try to be a hero and be an asshole. And
I was going to say one of my favorite things about that story I remember reading is because I mean you have to remember it's Doc Ock in his body. He doesn't automatically know how to use his powers. When he punched Scorpion's face off. Yeah, but when he's learning to web sling, I was it was kind of funny because he was kind of nervous about it, and then he was trying to figure it out. It's great. I mean, I think there's definitely bright moments in that whole story. I think it's kind of gross in a weird way. It's ugh, that's not Spider-Man. That's one of your arch enemies.
That's in your body controlling you and living your life.
Yeah, and it's does that give him redemption because he was trying to be good? It's but you switched his body. You did a villainous
act. The whole premise is flawed.
And the thing is too, I agree. It doesn't just make Otto a good guy exactly. He certainly starts being a good guy in terms of fighting crime and stuff like that. But there's no question. The writer is really good about this. They never he was secretly good the whole time. It's no, this is a bad guy who's sort of trying to be the role. And that's the thing is he can't get it because he's not motivated the way Spider-Man's motivated. Mm-hmm. He does have empathy. He does learn some stuff in this, because he has Parker's memories and stuff like that. But I think and that's another cool thing. The line between good and evil doesn't really get that blurred in that story. But anyway, that's my Spider-Man, or that's my number 9.
That's my Spider-Man.
That's my Spider-Man.
All right. So my number 9 is Captain Cold becoming a bounty hunter with his sister Golden Glider. So,
you would do Captain Cold.
I have a few Batman and Flash people in here. Anyway, so this is post-crisis after Barry Allen died. So pretty much Snart took a brief hiatus from his criminal ways so that him and Golden Glider, his sister, could start a business. So, I mean, the business name always kills me. It was called Golden Snowball Recoveries. So essentially,
that's disgusting.
So essentially, what they did was they worked to recover lost or stolen items, to with a guarantee of money back if they failed. But one of the most notable things, and why I put this on this list, is because they ended up taking jobs that were more heroic than just retrieving items for people. So there was this one, and Wally West was kind of in on it. So Wally West was posing as Porcupine Man, and they took up this, I guess, bounty to recover these boys that had fallen into a cave in New Mexico. So it was just kind of one of those, they didn't have to do this. This is one of their shticks. So that, I mean, it's not necessarily an item, but to help these kids that needed help because they were lost. And I don't know. So it was kind of interesting because Snart always toes that line of is he really bad? He does not like Flash, but is he hurting anybody else? You know what I mean? So it was more, so I always see Captain Cold as more of a rival for Flash himself and not necessarily just a villain out to kill people, because he doesn't really like to kill people. He more likes to rob banks. So,
yeah. I mean, so oh, go ahead. Sorry.
No. Go ahead. That's fine.
I would say he's wonderful as a character because he does invite that question: is the law the same thing as the good?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because you have a character that is just a crook who ended up, and I'm not justifying that behavior. I'm glorifying it. No. but you know, he's not. He is definitely a criminal. He steals everything like that, no question. But his intentions, though selfish, are rarely malicious or bad, and he has been straight up heroic even when he's in the bad guy role. Mm-hmm. So. You know, it's like it's almost surprising he didn't have like more of a straight up try at the superhero period.
Yeah.
Not you know, but
that's what I kind of liked. I kind of liked so the one thing that I liked about the Flash TV show. So Captain Cold was introduced in it, and the actor was great. They did a good job with him, but they did a really good job of making him toe that line. And they actually had him later on. He was pretty much just straight up good. And obviously, this isn't like in continuity; it's like an Elseworlds type thing. But that snart, that Captain Cold in that Flash universe was a homosexual, and he was in a relationship with another character. So, like, I always thought it was really cool that they like kind of took that like, is he good, is he not, and just made him like straight up good to see what happens type thing. So it was because I've always been interested in like what will push him to finally be good, or is he just always going to hate the Flash? Because he helps the Flash all the time, which is funny.
Yeah,
and it's like, okay, that's over. So now we can like fuck each other up. Yeah, so that's number 9.
All right. So I tried to, never mind. I didn't try. My list is not objective, right? Most of the characters on the list I like reading about, I care about. Are there universes that I care about? Number 9 is an exception because, and I chose it because of how fucked the Marvel universe would be if this didn't happen. And it's Vision rebelling against Ultron.
Heck yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, just imagine Vision staying as a bad guy, guys. Terrifying.
Oh, no, they'd be fucked.
No, yeah, exactly. And he doesn't, well, I mean, because of his nature, it's, Ultron's kind of tempted to bring him back, and it almost happens. But basically, Ultron, they call it like a synthezoid, makes Vision. He lures the Avengers into a trap. But after the Avengers kind of describe how Ultron made him, and we realizes he was kind of made after Simon Williams' brain patterns, Wonder Man, Vision just immediately is like, no, I'm part of the Avengers now. That's probably right.
And like, I'm with these guys.
Due to his romance with Scarlet Witch, I think because he's kind of like the Spock of the Avengers unit at this time. So imagine her without his like stabilizing presence. I imagine Scarlet Witch would be even more crazy and fucked up than she already is. So
it would have happened sooner.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So I just kind of credit Vision being part of the team as like saving the Avengers' lives in general, and also kind of being a leash for Scarlet Witch for a long time.
That's actually a good point, because like without Vision and the relationship with Scarlet Witch, and then by proxy Quicksilver. I mean, Quicksilver took a little bit longer to like stop with his shit. I mean, he's never technically stopped with his shit, but like, because I mean, he loves his sister, so he's like, he helps out more than not. So, that's actually a good point. So, like, by him becoming good, he kind of affected more people than you would think.
Yeah, exactly. And again, normally I'm just picking my favorite characters. I don't care how important this turn is, but this one I was just like, damn, history would have definitely changed.
Yeah.
And let's face it, the idea of a bad Vision, as Kayla alluded to, is just terrifying.
Yeah.
It's like one of his main modes of attack is he puts his hand through your chest intangibly, and then he solidifies it just slightly so it hurts you and you go unconscious. I don't know how the science checks out there, but if he was so inclined, he would just do it the other way and your chest would explode. Like he would solidify it like a diamond. And I don't want that. I don't want that in my world. But really, I mean, what's so cool about this example is it's such a 60s theme, because it's definitely Stan Lee just rejecting the sins of the father shit. You know what I mean? Because like Ultron is created by Pym. Pym's a good guy with good intentions, and he makes this character, this AI, and it becomes evil to the degree it destroys, it commits genocide, which we'll agree is bad. And then on the other end, that genocidal creature creates its vision of the perfect being. That's where the name comes from, or at least in the story. And it becomes like one of the greatest heroes of the Avengers. So I just think it's like such a cool turn and such a cool story.
Yeah. Good pick.
Yeah, it was a great pick.
Jared, number 8.
It's my turn? Okay. Cool. So number 8. So here's the thing. Sometimes bad guys stay bad while they're doing good. And I like that. Like, I don't think every story should be that way, but it is a cool moment. And I'm going to pick a great villain. Have you guys heard of Dr. Doom? Have you heard of him? He's super scary. Well, so if you don't know about Doom, he loves his mama. He is a total mama's boy.
Yeah, it's kind of creepy.
But the problem is she did. You said it.
Well, it gets creepy because she died. She was a mystic, a kind of sorcerer. She's where Doom got his magical abilities, really, or at least like the part of the heritage. And she died and went to hell. So that sucks. Not my mom. My mama's going to heaven. Anyway, okay. So Dr. Doom, a big part of his hidden motivation all these years had been to save his mom from Mephisto, basically Marvel's version of like Satan who rules hell. Okay. And on one occasion, he and Dr. Strange, this is where the story comes from. It's like their big graphic novel, one of Marvel's first like graphic novels, by the way. They go down to hell to save Doom's mom.
No.
And I don't want to ruin it, but because the story is so good, and I very much recommend it. But this is just an open and cut case of Dr. Doom just loving his mom and saving her from the devil.
And I think what I mean. Like he just needs some help. Like
absolutely. And Doctor Strange is good enough, and I think in Doom's mind, gullible enough that he will definitely help. Don't get me wrong. Doctor Doom does some duplicitous shit when they both get to hell, as you'd expect. But it's just really cool because it's like you really, no matter how evil he is, and he stays bad the whole time. He's not a dictator or trying to wreak vengeance against the Fantastic Four in his head the whole time, right? But this move of just trying to save his mom from the devil, it's just pure good. You just can't avoid it.
It's like the action is good, but he's bad.
Yes. It was like a moment of like, I'm gonna crush all of your will and rule the planet, but I'm gonna save this kitten from this tree. That's not happening.
I think that sounds like a really interesting story.
Yeah, it's real good.
It's
also, I love Doctor Strange.
Yeah, well, I was saying Noah, you should probably you may have read this already, but like I reread it before this, and it's also a great Doctor Strange moment, and these two actually have a cool history.
I haven't read it in a long time. I have read it though. I called it The Tale of Two Doctors. So that's what I always called it in my head.
Well, the weird thing about it is Doctor Strange always has this problem of Doctor Doom is like the second greatest sorcerer on the planet, or at least he's really up there. So he knows that if he fails and loses his sorcerer supremehood, it's gonna go to Doom. So it's just they have a fun dynamic anyway, and the story is really good. And it's like, okay, this awful Hitler-esque character does actually have at least some nobility somewhere in there, at least concerning his mom.
With what they deem is good. So.
All right.
Number 8 that I picked is Catwoman giving up crime mostly.
That never sticks.
No, I mean, so like it's always been like she's been a straight up villain. I would say mostly, or at least like a foil for Batman. And then it hasn't been really until like I'd say the New 52 when she really started stopped doing crime and being more good and helping Batman. Even when she had her own little run in New 52, and you really saw her like kind of what she does outside of Batman. It's like, so she does do good stuff. Like she's, patrolling the streets, patrolling her neighborhood, helping, these women and these girls that need help and stuff like that. But more recently, so after Batman proposes to her. So this is in Rebirth. And this is where her tendencies still are there. And this is why I love Catwoman. So I don't mind that she helps Batman. I think they're a really good team together, especially with the whole Bane story arc. It's really good. And also, stupid on Bane's part for trusting Catwoman. Like, these villains still trust Catwoman. And it's like, y'all, she hasn't done crime in years. Like, she's been with Batman. Like, why are you guys like...
She might as well be a cop at that point.
I mean, it's so funny. So anyway, so in Batman number 44, she wakes up in the middle of the night because she's like, I need to get a wedding dress because I'm getting married. So Wayne is her husband to be. He has tons of money. So, but instead she breaks into a bridal store and steals a $28,000 dress and then just goes back to sleep. So like she still has her like crime tendencies and stuff. And Batman finds out about it. And so does Alfred. And they're just like, well, I mean, she was going to do it anyway. So like, but
I'm down for that, by the way.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's good to stay true to the character. I mean...
And then he sends a check to the bridal store to cover the cost anyway.
Yeah. but to further more of kind of her being more good and that she doesn't just look out for number one, which is herself. And Batman number 50, so in like a twist, whenever they were supposed to get married, Catwoman pretty much doesn't marry him. And thinks that because if she marries him and the wedding bliss would make Bruce Wayne stop being Batman. So she kind of bites the wedding bullet to serve the better good of Gotham. So I thought it was nice to see her do something like that so selflessly. There we go.
Yep, that's the word.
It sounded like you said self-molestly, which I don't know what that means, but...
either way. So yeah, that's...
Yeah, but I'm totally down for the arrangement if they did get together, like if it did work out, where he's like, oh yeah, I'll let her go steal. I'm Batman.
Well,
like, and the reason I say that, he does... Who cares? Like, he's not knocking over, or he's not beating up crooks that like, I don't know. I mean, it just always feels like Batman should have a bigger... mind for crime, like he should only be worried about the serious shit.
Well, I think like the idea that's what plays into it. That like in the beginning when it was like campy and stuff like that, like in the 60s and stuff like that, it was robbers. Like he was going after robbers, stealing diamonds and stuff. But now his stories and comics and everything is much more bigger than that. That I think that he's just kind of letting that petty stuff slide a little bit. And also, you should read current Batman because. Yeah, that might be answered.
But I just feel like if somebody was like, Batman, somebody's robbing a liquor store, he would be like, well, send Booster Gold. I've got shit to do.
Yeah.
I don't know.
All right, Kayla, what's your number 8?
All right, so my number 8 pick, and I've already talked about this character a lot, is Venom. Because he tries with Eddie a lot to kind of be like a hero. Doesn't always work. I know on the super huge list that Jared compiled for us to kind of use as reference. So good job, Jared.
The master list.
You specifically mentioned Maximum Carnage, and I feel like you talked about Carnage too, because when we were talking about Venom, because you like Carnage a lot. But yeah, even in that one where Carnage, which is just Venom's kind of arch enemy, is wreaking havoc on New York, there's still a divide between the group that's trying to stop him. Like, Maximum Carnage implies all this death and blood and destruction, aptly named. And then, I mean, characters like Venom, Cap, Spider-Man, Iron Fist, they're all trying to, like, team up and stop this from happening. But within the group, Venom is like, we have to stop him at all costs. And Spider-Man is like, we can't use violent methods. And there's just like within him still being on the good side, people are like, you're not good enough, Venom. You're not good enough.
Yeah, it's good is a relative concept here because I think their attitude was just like, look, we're going to stop him and we can figure out if we're going to kill him after we stop him.
Yep. All right. Number 7.
Ooh, okay. So my number 7 is, I mean, it's sort of a classic example of Marvel Comics. It's the original Thunderbolts rebelling against Baron Zemo. So, long story short, with the Thunderbolts, they basically, after a bunch of Marvel heroes were gone because of the Onslaught fiasco, a bunch of villains, like classic Marvel villains, pretend to be good guys. But the whole thing initially was planned by Baron Zemo, who is one of the Avengers' greatest villains, who leads the Masters of Evil. It was his plan to sort of take, basically like get in good with the world governments by replacing the Avengers and then use that position to take over the world. That kind of shit. Classic shit, right?
Classic.
But here's the thing. Classic. But here's the thing. Most of the Thunderbolts, who are mostly like 9 to 5 crooks, characters like Songbird and Mach 5, Goliath, they have to act like heroes, and they're treated well, and they like it. I've talked about this team before on the podcast for different episodes.
Team up episode.
On our team, yeah, best teams. But the point being is that it's a really good example of like this. It's almost a trope where if you're treated a certain way, you actually kind of act that part and become that thing. And I think it's a great example. They just like being heroes better. You know what I mean? Like, rather than it just being a moral choice, it's like you almost wish you could tell every Marvel villain, like, just try being good. Like, maybe you'll like it better. Just try. Like,
Nice.
Yeah, and it's a great like legitimate reform. Most of those characters that were bad, or at least a lot of them on the team, there's about 6 or 7 characters. Most of them are still good to this day. So it's also an example of a good turn that stuck.
Lasting effects.
Heck yeah.
My number 7 is Lex the Liberator. Jeez Louise. I had that whole planned out, and I said it wrong because I almost dropped my water. So during Grant Morrison's Final Crisis, Libra reforms the secret society of supervillains and makes them far more effective and dangerous than they had been in prior incarnations. Pretty much this leads to killing Martian Manhunter and organizing the bombing of the Daily Planet, which nearly kills Lois Lane. So a lot of terrible shit's happening. That's happening right in Lex's front door. And he's actually helping orchestrate most of these events, which is kind of shitty and probably asking why he's on this list. So, but when Lex realizes that Libra is working for Darkseid and is attempting to take over the world, this is the classic example of pretty much what Jared had said earlier. A meteor's coming for Earth. I gotta save it because I don't want to die too. So pretty much Libra enslaves most of the villains using Justifier's helmet to broadcast the anti-life equation to the wearers, making them mindless puppets. Lex and Dr. Sivana work together to undo the Justifier's programming and freeing the world of slavery. So that's pretty much how he saves the planet because he doesn't want to be slave. So he's like, well, I guess I got to help my fellow villains and the rest of the population of Metropolis by stopping this mind control.
I mean, Lex is one of those characters that he could be good half the time. He's one of the few, I'll put it this way, villains I've always felt like if he did take over the world, it would probably not be so bad.
Well, I mean, you saw...
There are worse villains to take over the world. Yeah. I agree with you there.
Yeah, I mean, there's been like Elseworld type things, and like even when he was like president during Frank Miller's run and stuff like that, like, I mean, he wasn't bad. Like, I mean, he was bad, but like he had good intentions. Like most of the things that Lex Luthor does, it's like, yes, he kind of does shady like stock trading crap or whatever, but he's like rebuilding the community at the same time. So it's like, yes, you're getting the money the wrong way, but like he also built a really nice park for everybody.
Oh my God.
Like, I don't know.
I mean, Luthor thinks that Superman is holding back the development of the human race by fixing their problems. He's not 100% wrong.
Yeah.
In the first place, he's just an egomaniac. So the fact that like he would also turn good in moments where something like Darkseid, like there's no Lex is obviously going to be like, yeah, Darkseid fucking sucks. You know what I mean? Like,
well, he can't rule a world that doesn't exist.
Exactly.
That's
Which
right.
I think he's actually said before, or something to that effect.
He has that tattooed on his back.
What's your number 7, Kayla?
Yeah, mine is again kind of just a ripple effect impactful thing. If it didn't happen, and it happens very early in her origin story, it's Black Widow defecting from the Soviet Union.
Hell yeah.
Yeah. I mean, she's so intrinsically tied to, I mean, not only the Avengers storylines, but just so many different characters in the Marvel Universe. I still can't get over the fact that she dated Daredevil. That's going to be stuck in my brain forever, I think.
They make a cute couple.
No. But no, yeah, she's just an important character. I mean, I guess one of the central female characters with the MCU coming up, just one of the most recognizable female characters in Marvel. And I just think that change would have been really crazy if it didn't happen. We would have a killer assassin against us. Although I think the concept of an evil Black Widow being consistently there is pretty cool too.
I agree. I think that would be cool to see.
I mean, it's an interesting case too, because if you know the origin pretty, well, it's clear they didn't know she was going to be a good guy when they initially wrote her.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I think it was pretty mysterious, and they almost didn't know what to do with her. And I think that they just experimented some stories where she kind of defects and sort of like helps out Iron Man and things like that. And I think they were kind of like, we like this Natasha better, and that's cool.
Yeah. Yeah, it brings out more, I guess, kind of like psychological like drama with her, like as far as like defecting to there and then going to good. I've always liked stories where like they kind of redeem themselves in an interesting way.
Yeah, exactly.
Especially,
and then that dark past is still very much a part of their present, where they're not kind of...
Oh, yeah.
Makes a better, well-rounded character or interesting character.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, is it hard for anybody to imagine her having gone the other way? Not at all, right? Like, she's definitely... it's a good one out, though. Okay. So my number 6, this is important because it's coming out soon. It's Black Adam.
I thought you were doing Ratatouille for a second. So
it's the same. It's the same. Every accent is the same, Noah. Anyway, but I was doing Bane. Anyway, no, it's Black Adam. Actually, for a while, joined the JSA. And this wasn't, and it's cool that that's going to happen in the movie. I don't know if he's going to join them, but that they're going to be there. His history is pretty interlinked, and the thing is that like I think this was a little bit. Hasn't like people don't know it as well, but in the early aughts, that's when Black Adam actually had a pretty hard good turn. Mm-hmm. And the reason that we kind of think of Black Adam as maybe kind of on the good side sometimes is really because of this period of time. And what happened was. For a while in his history, there was this question about whether he was influenced by Teth Adam or Theo Adam. Theo Adam was like a reincarnation. And they went hard on the notion that Theo Adam was the bad influence. Mm-hmm. So in a story where that bad part of him gets exorcised, he's only left with the original, apparently noble Teth Adam. And he joins the Justice League for a while, Justice Society, sorry. And he's basically one of their big guns, and he's like hard-edged. He's kind of like their Wolverine. And this kind of ends because they won't be killy enough. Even though he's a good guy, that his nation of Kahndaq is taken over by a bunch of bad guys, and Black Adam tells the JSA, hey, we got to do something. They're like, well, this is kind of political, and it seems like we'd have to punch people in the face and kill them. We're not going to do that. So he forms his own other team, and then they liberate Kahndaq. And when the JSA tried to stop him, to be like, that, you're being bad, it turns out all the people of Kahndaq love him for being this great liberator. Mm-hmm. And then from then on, Black Adam's kind of a Dr. Doom figure. He's kind of bad, but there's this period where he was just straight up like he resolved to be in the Justice Society, and you just had to give it up to him and be like, he's kind of a superhero right now.
Yeah, I mean, he just to kind of touch on it a little bit. He kind of reminds me of Captain Cold a bit. Because, like, I mean, most of the time he's not necessarily like, I don't know, like doing terrible things to a bunch of people. Like, he's after Shazam because he's pretty much jealous that he's the new champion of Shazam.
Yeah.
So it's like he's a villain to him. Like, yeah, he wants to kill a 14-year-old boy, but like he also helped free his people. So
you're saying that in such a flippant tone makes you sound like a sociopath. Just so you know.
I like interesting villains. Okay.
I mean, the problem too is that like with Black Adam, it's like a great power, or like power corrupts absolute power, because like a lot of his problem is he's usually one of the most powerful beings in the room.
Yeah.
Even amongst superpowers. So it's kind of tempting for him to be like, well, that's evil, brain punch, no more evil, and then yeah, I mean, but anyway, yeah, it's that JSA period for Black Adam. It's if you really want to know what he's like away from just I'm going to crush the world. That's the one to go to.
Nice. So my number 6 is Kid Loki. So pretty much in Siege, when Loki manipulated Norman Osborn into leading his Dark Avengers and Hammer into attacking Asgard, pretty much that plan goes sideways because I believe it was Sentry that went into like his void form or whatever. And
that's correct.
Yeah. So, and then when the real Avengers were going to go defend Asgard, that's when pretty much Void unleashed his true power and ended up killing Loki, essentially. But before the siege, Loki had manipulated Hela into taking his name out of the Book of Hell, essentially. So allowing him to be reborn instead of actually dying. Thor ended up finding his younger Loki in Paris. And without any memories or acts, pretty much Thor kind of wants to take this opportunity to, I don't know, like reform his brother or like start over with him. So he ends up like taking him back to Asgard. And it's interesting because Loki, he has dreams, and like Kid Loki, he has dreams of things that he did when he was an adult, and he doesn't like it. Because he doesn't have his evil ways at this time. He doesn't like what he's seeing. He's scared that those memories are actually the dreams are his past self. And Loki kind of wants to reform for that. But it's a little hard when you take him to Asgard and your father, quote unquote, is being a complete dick to you and everybody hates you.
Yeah.
Even though it's not you per se, if that makes sense. Like it's you, but you don't have memories. So therefore it's not old you, so it's hard for him to kind of be good when everybody's literally spitting on him. But yeah, I mean that's just kind of the start of it. So like Loki gets this fresh start, and he ends up joining the Young Avengers and all that. So, I thought it was interesting for them to not only change Loki because he's a shapeshifter and he's been in many forms before, but just take Loki out of Loki. But then you find out that, I mean, older Loki had this plan all along. So it's kind of weird. It's really timey-wimey and weird, but I liked that young Loki tried to be better than what he thought he was. So
yeah, I really like the young Loki series too.
Mm-hmm.
This is a great pick because this tackles the issue like more than most of the picks that we're gonna have, because this is that story is so wonderfully developed over a few years. But the whole point is that Kid Loki doesn't want to be what he is.
Yeah, exactly.
Like he's becoming himself. Because
it's an interesting thing with villains, because most of the time, like something tragic happens to them, and instead of going good, they go bad. So it's like the reverse of heroes, obviously. So it's like, so if you take all of the memories and all of the tragedy out of them, will they be good or will they always be bad? So it's an interesting kind of like a weird, not psychological study, but a good like analysis on what villains would be like if you took all that stuff out. Is it inherent in them? Are they always going to be that way? Or is it, situational? So I always thought it was interesting. So
it's like Catcher in the Rye-esque.
Yeah.
So sad.
Kayla, number 6.
Yeah. So it doesn't really stick more than all of the other people that joined Birds of Prey, but Poison Ivy joining Birds of Prey was
yep.
mainly for her girlfriend Harley. Let's be real.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
No, just kidding. But yeah, Poison Ivy is one of those characters that, I mean, just depending on the story, she can do good. Because again, she's not one for seeing the whole world destroyed, for seeing innocents being killed. But she's also not against killing people to kind of protect her plants, protect her babies.
Mm-hmm.
But I think seeing Poison Ivy in any team book kind of casts her a little bit lighter, because even if she's not like the most heroic of the team, her just interacting with other characters that are, like, I don't know, more good. She can rise to the occasion, basically. So I like seeing Poison Ivy as more than just a villain in a Batman book. Like I said, I prefer her in team books when she can kind of be more, I don't know, fleshed out. So yeah, just giving her the opportunity to work with other people and work with teams tends to make her more complex than evil plant lady in Batman comics.
Exactly.
I mean, she's an eco-terrorist. Right?
Yeah.
So it's sort of like, oh, thankfully, I like your motivation to stop, like, fucking up the environment, but you killed those people. And so we part ways there.
Exactly. Number 5. Halfway done.
Yeah. So my number 5, let's go back to Loki. And let's be fair, we're lucky that not half of the entries on this list are Loki, because
Loki's on my list too, so keep going.
He's done so many good and some. Okay, so my pick is recent, and he's had a lot of good moments. But in War of the Realms, my pick is when when Loki stabs Freya in the back. I like it just say because that sounds like, how could that be good? But the fact is that during the War of the Realms, Loki sort of temporarily allies himself with Malekith. But Loki's always playing 4 or 5 different directions.
Yep.
4 or 5 different, he's always doing that 3-dimensional chess and everything like that. And he basically realizes Malekith is awful and doesn't want any part of it. But he realizes also that, like, there's no way that Malekith's not going to kill Freya, Thor's mother, and Freya is central to the stability of the Asgardian sort of, like, basically, like, good guy movement, let's say. So Loki chooses to betray her and stab her in the back with a poison knife, just barely killing her. He puts her in a coma. So the idea being, like, he would kill her in a way that she would survive. And because if Malekith did it first, he would definitely kill her. So I just love that this is a great example of Loki, like, not only being like this master manipulator or gamesman, but also his idea, the way he does good, which actually is good, is to stab someone in the back. It's just a wonderfully Jason Aaron piece of writing.
Yeah. I mean,
exactly.
I think I talked about this exact instance, I think on, like, our villains episode or something like that.
Yes, you did.
Where I was, like, building a case for Loki being good. I was like, he stabbed his mom for good reasons.
And it's very mythological, so it feels like, because Loki kind of does the stuff in the myths a lot where he gets everybody into trouble and gets them out of it, or he's doing something good for bad reasons or bad things for good reasons. That's just who he is. And then it's just a wonderful little Loki moment.
So my number 5 is the same as Kayla's number 6.
Nice.
Oh, wonderful.
So Poison Ivy becoming good. So, I mean, just to kind of, I'll just touch on the recommendation that I was going to do because Kayla pretty much said everything I was going to say anyway. So in Poison Ivy Cycle of Life and Death, she's pretty much repositioned as a botanical hero. So she actually creates these 2 plant-human hybrids, like kids. She makes kids, and she calls them Rose and Hazel, and it's really sweet and cute. But you get to see her kind of not just defending these plants and making giant, like, Venus flytrap monsters, but seeing how much she, like, loves what she is and what she's a part of, and kind of repositioning herself as a hero and not as a villain. So not going too crazy when people, like, dump waste in, where plants are, just more like being like, hey, don't do that. But I thought it was I liked this turn for her. She's still always up in the air. You never quite know which way she's going to go, because she did play a big part in Heroes in Crisis, which sucked. But it's always interesting. She's kind of, like, in a weird way, a Loki-esque type thing, because she's bad, but she's been good. So you never know what you're going to get with her. It depends on who she teams up with.
It's like the potential for good is always is there just under the surface.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So that's my number 5.
Nice. All right. So for my number 5, I chose within the Bat family.
Ooh.
I'm sure Noah probably has this on his list. Sorry. It's Cassandra Cain breaking away from her terrible childhood.
I did. I had that as number 4, but I took it away. So you're good.
Oh, you did?
Nice.
Yeah.
Oof. All right. So basically, oh gosh, I don't even want to get into the uglies of how she was conceived. But
we talked about that on our Women of Bat episode.
yeah. So I don't need to repeat. It's pretty horrifying. Her conception was horrifying. She was born as like a trying to train as a bodyguard to Ra's al Ghul. Eventually, she joins the Bat Fam and is Noah's favorite member of the Bat family.
Yay, I love her so much.
No, but Cassandra Cain is different in terms of like she wasn't taught to speak or read or write. So just watching her, she really has to kind of relearn everything once she defects to the good side. So I just think that it's not just as an adult. She did it quite young. So it's just kind of an interesting take on a person who was raised bad turning good.
Mm-hmm. You have to, she has to learn how to be a person.
Yeah.
Like not to be a weapon. Like, so, I mean, it's really interesting.
And what a cool metaphor.
Yeah. It's kind of like the precursor to Damien in a weird way. Like, I felt like Damien was like Cassandra 2.0, but not as well done. So, I mean, he has his own good things going for him, but the same concept is there. Like, these kids were raised to be weapons, to be murderers, essentially. And then when they become in the Bat family, then it's like, you know, you either choose to be good or choose not to. I mean, Batman loves his fucked up kids. So like, it's only natural that one like that would join him.
I mean, honestly, we could have done a top 10 times Batman turned a bad guy good.
Oh,
yeah.
If we wanted.
I mean, I have one coming up, so be prepared. All right, number 4.
Okay, so this is kind of, I know spoilers are always in effect, but this one's a big one because it's crucial to the story. But my number 4 chick, sorry, can't speak. My number 4 pick is Omni-Man rebelling against the Viltrumite Empire. Now, it comes from the Invincible comic, and if you don't know, like the big sort of reveal in the kind of second volume here is that Omni-Man, who's like Superman. This is the sort of story, is that, you know, the Superman-like character, super strength, flight, all that kind of stuff, who's a hero, came from beyond the stars, so sort of like Krypton. That's the story he tells, and he even tells his son, Mark, the protagonist, Invincible. But it turns out, the twist is the Viltrumites are not some highly advanced, positive, what do you call it, like a galactic power that went extinct. The Viltrumites are conquerors of the worst ilk.
It's
and
like
the whole reason
planet of Zods.
That's right. That's what a great way to put it. So the whole reason that Mark's dad is on Earth is to take it over, essentially, prep it for invasion. And when Mark, aka again Invincible, finds out that his dad, they have this huge slugfest fight. Battle punching match. Anyway, yeah, I think I got it right. They fight, and and Omni-Man, being an older Viltrumite who's far more powerful, just absolutely beats the shit out of his son. And they have a very like Darwinian attitude of survival of the fittest. So he actually has this weird like he should kill his son, but because he spent time on Earth, he has this moment where he can't do it. He flies away, and there's a slow period of Omni-Man basically rejecting the Viltrumites and the evil empire in very Darth Vaderian fashion and joining his son to fight against them. But it's just really cool because it's this moment where he was completely evil, and it's just the love of his son and the sympathy for his son being heroic that like it's like this catalyst that he just does a hard good guy turn. Yeah. And yeah, so it's I mean, and it's one of the strong parts of the series.
It's a story as old as time with Beauty and the Beast.
Sorry, that cliche is funny.
Yeah,
with with the alien coming to Earth and like either building a friendship with Elliot or like whatever, like they kind of reverse their ways and like, oh, I don't want to destroy this planet, but it flipped it a little bit. It was a little more unique because it was family based. So with this whole family dynamic you have going on, it's like, do I kill my son or not? It's like, is your orders more important than your family? It was just, it's so good. I love that.
And Omni-Man is his culture. So he's not some evil dude individually away from his people. He's like Christopher Columbus. No, exactly. He's like Christopher Columbus. I mean, when Columbus landed, he basically suggests they enslave everybody. You know, Omni-Man did what Christopher Columbus could not do, and that's a sentence you will never hear anywhere else.
All right. We're on number 4, right?
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, okay. So number 4, Rogue joining the X-Men. So this took place a long time ago. So a lot of people might forget that she was part of the Brotherhood of Mutants, which makes sense because she was adopted by Mystique, and Mystique was running them at the time. So when Rogue absorbed Carol Danvers, pretty much her whole psyche, she started losing her mind. And what better person to go to fix your broken mind than Professor Xavier? So pretty much Professor X wasn't able to fully, I guess he couldn't scan her correctly because there was the Kree portions in her psyche and then the human portions. So Xavier still wanted to help her because he has that whole thing of, all mutant kind is welcome in the House of X. But the X-Men did not like that because they had been fighting this crazy absorbing power woman. They threatened to disband and everything. Pretty much it gets resolved whenever they go, I believe they have to, did they go to Tokyo because Wolverine's going to marry Mariko? Isn't that? I think he's going to marry Mariko, and then a whole thing happens because Wolverine have been partners with Carol, and then he sees Rogue there, and he's like, "What the fuck are you doing here?" So it's this whole big like Rogue kind of like coming into a room that she's not welcome in because she needed help in the first place. And then in the background, you find out the Mystique and this other villain were kind of amping up her broken psyche, like amping up Carol Danvers' psyche inside of Rogue psyche. So it was this whole backstabbing within a backstabbing brotherhood type thing.
That's a pretty ugly part of Carol's story.
Yeah.
I get the X-Men's skepticism.
Yeah.
Because they're like, yeah, she was in the Brotherhood of Evil Mutants, not the Brotherhood of Misunderstood Mutants, and they named themselves. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I believe like they kind of forgive her because isn't like everybody's like poisoned or is incapacitated or something, and then Rogue and Wolverine are forced to team up to find the culprit. So it's just kind of funny.
And they're a band of like misunderstood outlaws, like the X-Men. So like, of course, they're gonna forgive.
Yeah, it took them a little bit, but they ended up forgiving. All right, number 3.
Oh no. Oh, you get it. You're skipping Kayla.
How insulting!
Sorry, I'm so sorry.
All right. So if Jared didn't
let's hope Noah turns good one day. How about that?
Next on my list is Noah. No, he's so important to me. That would be number 1. So Magneto, right?
That's it. That's all you need to say.
I'm tempted to just leave it there.
Yeah, it's true.
Magneto, right? But there's this one moment. It was when we were doing our X-Men timeline deep dive. I did Age of Apocalypse. Mm-hmm. And there's this moment where Legion comes back to kill, and then Charles Xavier like sacrifices himself to save Magneto, and then Magneto is like, "I'm good now due to my beloved Charles being dead. No one can take his place, but I'm gonna try."
Yeah.
But I mean, Magneto obviously has functioned good in other stories. I know if Jared hasn't changed his list based on the doc that he's going to talk about Magneto as well, but I love that character, and he had to be up there on the top.
It's interesting with that because, I mean, just to touch on it for a second, it's not one of those like an asteroid is coming and they have to be good. Like he made the choice.
Mm-hmm.
Like, he made the choice to, like, help the X-Men too, because, I mean, who else is going to take care of this ragtag team of superpowered doofuses? So,
Well, the thing is, too, is that her pick, the Age of Apocalypse Magneto, is, like, the timeline gets rewritten. So this is Magneto who's never been bad.
yeah.
Which is cool. Like, the concept. Like, this is an alternate version. So he's not, like, a temporary leader of the X-Men. He formed the X-Men.
Yep.
Yeah, which I think makes perfect sense.
Number 3.
And what makes perfect sense is my number 3 is Magneto.
We've been,
when
like,
he led the
on point with
Yeah.
these last couple ones.
yeah, but my Magneto is a different instantiation, and in certain ways it's the first time this was tried, but it was in the 616, the main continuity, when he led the X-Men. So what a lot of people don't know is that really Magneto wasn't so sympathetic early on. It was, in Stan Lee's Magneto, it's like, yeah, you could kind of see, like, a lot of villains, he was partially good or had a good motivation, but he was basically obviously on the wrong side of the issue, according to Stan Lee and everything like that. So, but Chris Claremont, when he takes over, one of the things he does is slowly, over a period of things, soften Magneto, making him more, like, Claremont's the guy who brought in the idea that he was a Holocaust survivor. And so after a fight with Baron Zemo's kids, these mutants named Fenris, who when they touch each other, they can blast each other, and they're kind of like evil corporate assholes or whatever. Professor X is seriously injured, and at this point, the Secret Wars has happened. So Magneto was already designated a little bit as a good guy, and he's been doing some good stuff. They fought some bigots together. That's how you really bond, as you fight bigots together. Well, Professor X asks him to be basically his replacement. And for a period of time, Magneto, not only is he good, he runs Xavier's school. So
he's like, Charles really asked me, time. I can't say no.
Exactly.
Absolutely. and I think it's also a cool point, because it's the one where, like, they've gone back and forth, but this is where Magneto was just kind of like accepted that he was wrong. And that Professor X had the right attitude. This won't stick around forever, obviously, but, like, it was just cool, because it's like, this is one of those status changes where, no, he's just straight up a good guy. And also post this, it always has to be complicated.
Oh yeah.
You can never, after doing this, you couldn't return to, like, oh, Magneto's just straight up, like, he had to be complicated. I mean, he's a Holocaust victim survivor, for God's sake. Like, there's just no way to cast that character as completely evil.
Yeah. Exactly. I love that.
All right. My number 3, Riddler getting brain damage.
Yay, Riddler!
So during the Infinite Crisis, Enigma was struck in the head by Shining Knight's mace, which put him in a coma. And then 1 year later, because, I mean, it's Riddler, like, he's not, like, strong. He's like a toothpick. Hey,
if somebody hits me in the head with a mace, I'll probably be in a coma.
Yeah, well, that's what I meant. He's not Batman. So anyway,
yeah, that's true.
So he came out of the coma a year later, and he dropped the whole Riddler persona, but his intellect, his personality, and his overinflated ego was still there. So he was still him. But he wanted to kind of, I guess, redo his ways. He saw a new chance on life, so he became a private detective, which, I mean, what better kind of person would you want solving, life's greatest riddles with you is, the ex-Riddler. So, I mean, he helped people like Batman. He helped Nightwing a lot. Whenever there was a gang war between Whale and Penguin, he actually, during this, when he was helping Nightwing, he actually figured out Nightwing's identity.
Yeah, I mean, if Riddler's a good guy, he's basically at that point Sherlock Holmes with, like, the ugliest fashion sense.
There was a cool part too, because there was a time where Mary Marvel was kind of an asshole and really brutal with a lot of the villains that she was beating up. And Riddler happened to come across this whenever he was investigating Clayface, and he told, like, Mary Marvel, he's like, you should probably seek some help, because she's being a little too crazy. So it's interesting to see this kind of ego maniac kind of subdue his ways a little bit, but find an outlet where he could be good.
Nigma's like, look, you're crazy, and I know crazy.
Exactly. Kayla, number 3.
Yeah, so number 3 for me, I have Loki in parentheses every time. LOL.
Yeah, nice.
Because I know Jared mentioned a specific moment, but there's just basically any story that involves Loki. It kind of is the push and pull of him doing something bad, but like, oh no, I don't actually want Thor or Freya to die, doing something bad again, and oh wait, that went too far. I have to save them now. And I mean, like you were saying, it wouldn't be Loki without that push and pull. Loki is obviously one of my favorite characters, so that's why he's so far up the list. But again, I mean, I feel like that sort of dynamic, the whole like, oh, he's good now, but don't trust it. He's gonna do something else, happens in basically every story that Loki ever appears in ever, and I wouldn't change that. So.
Oh, I was that itself is a kind of new development in the last, but it's a long one. So it was like the last, I'd say, like 20 years or so. It's been that way. So in some sense, like what you're pointing to is a big character change in general. Because like we've talked about before, there was a long period of time where he was just straight up evil wizard. You know what I mean? Like they didn't. He was jealous, and they kind of gave him like you can see, he was never loved by his father. You can see why he's a dick. But I think we've sort of talked about this before. Loki really doesn't become a really interesting character until what Kayla's pointing to kind of happens with him is that they make him complicated. Mm-hmm. They do put that push and pull in there, which is cool.
It is cool.
Number 2.
The big 2. Now we're still in the world of Thor, which I like because that's where I'm staying.
I'm
my
get
2.
off of it.
Hell yeah. We'll see what happens.
I'm going back to Batman.
Nope.
Number 2. My number 2 is Scourge the Executioner at the Bridge of Galabru. So it's a real cool story because if you didn't know Scourge, he's the executioner. He was kind of like the flunky of Amora and Loki at times and stuff like that. Big guy, big axe, jealous of Thor. That's the idea. And he spent that way, was it kind of like number 2 henchman, for a good 30 years, something like that. But there's this mission that he goes on with the rest of the Asgardians to say Malekith has, like, when he loses this big fight, he has all these souls of humans that he like sends to Hela's realm in hell, right? He sort of kidnapped them, and he says, so the Asgardians feel the need to go save them, obviously, because Asgardians are awesome. Scourge goes with them, but they are successful. They defeat Hela. Thor defeats her, but he's sort of injured at the time. And so as they're leaving, they're being chased by the dead, and there's this bridge called Galabru, which actually it's not real, but it's in Norse mythology or whatever. And realizing that they need basically somebody's got to stop them. Somebody's got to stay behind. Scourge sort of sacrificed himself because he was like, he's been a laughingstock and a screw up his entire immortal life, and so he decides that he's going to have this last stand and save the rest of the Asgardians. And it's a great sort of thing because not only was he basically a bad guy for most of his history, but he was kind of an embarrassing bad guy. So in this last moment before he dies, he is this insanely great hero. So it elevates him not only into the good right at the end in classic form, but it kind of makes his last stand super dignified. And to this day, it's probably his defining moment as a character, which is just really cool.
Way to come in at the last moment.
yeah. And that moment actually was referenced in Thor Ragnarok.
Yep.
Yeah, when he has the 2 assault rifles.
He jumps off the ship.
It's a beautiful moment.
All right, we're getting Green Lantern in this one. So number 2, Sinestro the White Lantern. So this one, it's interesting. So this is another like comic. Asteroid coming to Earth, going to destroy Earth. I have to protect it or whatever. During this whole Blackest Day and everything, Hal Jordan is actually under control. Like, he has the Parallax entity inside of him. Once Necron, the Black Lantern, uses the Owen blood after killing the Guardians to summon the White Lantern entity, which is the entity of life, the White Lanterns, essentially. It's funny, there's this like interaction between Hal and Sinestro where Hal is like, okay, I'm gonna go get that entity inside of me because I just did Parallax. And it's like this weird like jealousy, like you had your turn. Like Sinestro's like, no, you already had one, let me get one this time. So, so then he ends up getting, becoming the White Lantern. He gets the entity inside of him. But the fucked up thing about this is once he gets the entity inside of him, the White Lantern, the White Lantern shows him the entity's entire history. So it's like, yeah, I just got all this power, but like I am distracted because I'm seeing all of space and time being shown in front of me. And Necron sees that opportunity to pretty much cut Sinestro in half. But when he does, I think it's like Indigo 1 realizes that like, oh, he's not dead. Like there's no wound. He's just kind of like cut in half. So Sinestro uses that as a good advantage of an attack to pretty much destroy Necron. So, or at least hinder him because he's death himself and he can't just be killed. So without Sinestro essentially getting the entity, the Blackest Night would have never become the brightest day. So that's what I wanted to end on. God.
That makes sense. I mean, like I was just going to say, you have to accept about Sinestro, as bad as he is, for the longest period of time, like it's just sort of the prehistory of the comic, but he was the greatest Green Lantern in the history of the Corps.
Yeah, and it's one of those things, a jealousy thing again. It's like Black Adam. Like, oh, somebody's better than me. Somebody's getting more notice than me. Fuck all you guys.
Well, also, if you remember, the whole point is that Sinestro was almost too good. He like used fear to control his sector.
Yeah.
Because he thought it would prevent violence. And that's the thing. I mean, his history before he did the villain turn, it wasn't just, he was the most powerful. He was like the most heroic. Mm-hmm. I mean, saving people, sacrificing, doing all the good guy shit. So it's like him being good in these moments and other ones. It also kind of reminds you, it's like, that is actually kind of embedded in the character. Yeah. It's not just like, all of a sudden.
I mean, Sinestro War and everything kind of makes you rethink that, but yeah. I agree.
He's gone full on bad, no
shitty.
question.
Yeah. All right, number 2, Kayla.
Yes. So my number 2, the iconic moment Harley Quinn says, "Fuck you, Joker," and leaves.
Yay! I love this.
So I've definitely talked about Harley Quinn doing this. I think on the romance episode when I was like, and then she found her girlfriend Poison Ivy and she's so much happier. Mm-hmm. And this is, I feel like both parts of Harley's story are equally as important, equally as interesting. So I'm not saying that when her fall as Harleen wasn't interesting. I think her time with the Joker was really fucked up, but it also adds some well, it's the Joker, so it just adds to his fucked up story. But I feel like Harley defecting finally it was such a breath of fresh air. I didn't think it would happen, and sometimes it's not permanent. She is having a hard time pulling away from his sway if he's like staring her right in the face and is like, "Hey babe, just do this for me." It's hard for her to say no.
Exactly. That's why she has
for the most part, she really has been trying to separate herself from the abuse. And I just feel like the story is really almost inspiring in a way. And I'm glad that it stuck because I wasn't sure it would for a while.
I agree. I like that pick. Yay. Number 1.
Yeah, so I don't know if this is my favorite, but it is definitely to me the best. Give my opinion. Is that it's Silver Surfer rebelling against Galactus.
Ooh, I was going to do this
world. One. Yeah, I mean, I think it's one of those things. It is I can't say it's one of the first examples of this happening, but it's probably the first best, if that makes sense. This is it happens in Fantastic Four 48 to 50. This is recognized as one of the best stories Stan Lee ever wrote. It's always in sort of classic. And I mean, the basic idea is that there's this character Galactus who's this like universal force. who eats planets. I mean, let's face it. He's hungry. He eats planets. He comes down, and the Fantastic Four, try to stop him, and they have very little. He's, I mean, it's like if God attacked our planet. There's just very little to do with it. The one thing there is he has this assistant, this herald, Silver Surfer, and Silver Surfer flies down but he usually doesn't get this close to the planets that he points out to his master to destroy. Mm-hmm. And when he meets this character, FF fans will know, Alicia Masters. She's a blind sculptor that was like friends with the Thing, and actually they got married and everything like that. But basically, Alicia Masters is such a noble spirit, I guess. She convinces Silver Surfer to give a shit about the planet.
Yeah.
And he basically, I mean, I don't want to completely spoil it, but it's like a 70-year-old comic, so maybe that won't hurt. But basically, he even though he's no match against his master Galactus, he does show the Human Torch where the ultimate nullifier is, which is the most powerful weapon ever, which helps them stop Galactus. But the point is that, like, this is a character who, it's one of the first examples of a character who's this deeply destructive force who, by witnessing the value of humanity, becomes good, and it really launches what is going to be one of the Marvel Comics' greatest heroes and most interesting characters in the Silver Surfer. So I don't know. I think to me it is the example in my mind.
I like how he just needed a little nudge, like a little.
Oh,
like,
it's
hey,
if you read that
give a shit
comic,
about us.
if you read the comic, and it's got so much 60s cheese in it, as wonderful as the core of the story is, and it is very much like, he's like, why should I not kill everyone? And Alicia Masters is like, because people are good. You know, you care. Look at those people down there. They're eating ice cream. And he's like, Rocky Road. Well, I guess I won't kill everyone. I mean, it's like really, it's 6 panels. He goes from being like, aren't people the same as squirrels to like the greatest humanitarian ever? And it's really, but you come to love that 60s cheese, honestly.
All right, my number one is super short, super sweet, and mainly because most people might not know. So it's Sam Wilson, the Falcon, or Captain America, whichever one you want to say. So
this is your number one. Holy shit!
What?
This is your number one. I'm not skeptical. I'm just saying this is a big surprise.
Yeah. So, I mean, especially of a Captain America character being my number one. So, not only is Falcon Captain America's best friend next to Bucky, don't worry, of course I'll include Bucky in that. He also was Cap for a little bit, but he actually got his powers when he worked alongside Red Skull. So. But like before that, before he turned good, he was like, he would rob stuff. He was in Harlem doing a bunch of crime, and he was a henchman to Red Skull. And then he got his powers, and then turned on Red Skull and helped Cap take him down. So it's just like one of those like bro, like kind of like before they became bros, and then they're bros ever since type thing. So.
Nice.
I just like it. Like, I mean, a lot of people, I feel like Falcon sometimes gets thrown under the radar a lot, or his origin really isn't talked about. It's just like he's always just kind of been Falcon, or he's been Captain America, one of the two. So I always think it's interesting to see the character development from, when he was in the beginning, he worked with Red Skull, which is very interesting. You wouldn't expect that from him.
He defected to the exact opposite side.
Yeah.
Not least of which because he's a black guy and Red Skull's a Nazi, but yeah, absolutely.
All right, Kayla, number one.
Yeah, so I'm doing this as a favor to Noah, me trying to see the world in his point of view. My number one pick is Damian, shaking off the League of Assassins mentality and being a good boy. So,
yay!
Oh, that is the ultimate olive branch.
Right.
Love it.
We both kind of get what we want. So Damian was an asshole little child who is trying to murder people to solve all of his problems. He tried to kill my second favorite Robin, Tim, multiple times.
Yep.
But over time, bonding with Dick Grayson, getting to know his father, Bruce Wayne, more. He listens to their mentality and their words of wisdom and is slowly becoming a better person. And he kind of completes the whole personality, like, square of my Robins. So
That's
I
true.
really do like him with the rest of the Robins. I feel like he's vital to the Batman family. And I'm glad he's come so far from being a crazy murderer.
Yay! Both of your number ones were great, but they have surprised the shit out of me.
Oh, really?
Yeah. I would have lost so much money on that bet.
Really?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, 'cause-
for reasons you've both recognized.
Yeah,
You're like, if I like that you would pick Captain America characters and that Kayla would go against type and embrace Damien's redemption.
I see like Kayla's
We both
embrace.
surprised you. That's fun.
Yeah, I see Kayla's embrace for Damien like kind of like a pat hug. Like, okay, okay, go back.
Good.
Yeah, so that's our top 10 of when villains broke good. Before we get into reading recommendations, I did want to do a special thank you to our new Patreon subscriber. So it's been a minute since we've done one of these, and if you've made it this far in the episode, why the hell are you not subscribing to our Patreon? Because we have exclusive stuff on there. We give you free stuff, and also there's more episodes. So, if you like us, go over there. So Martin Sanchez, he is our new Patreon subscriber. So what we usually do is we give them either a superhero name, superhero powers, or villain, or neither or neither, whatever we decide. And then we give you a few shout outs and stuff. So Martin Sanchez, I'm going to, oh no, I don't know. What can we give this guy?
Oh, that's easy. I mean, I'm instantly knew. So I didn't hear you. You didn't say what he chose for the episode, did you?
No. Well, I mean, so he wants us to do Green Lanterns.
Good.
So, yeah.
Okay. I wasn't going to say anything, but I will say it's my favorite choice that a Patreon person has picked thus far.
Aww.
So often they pick ones and they're good, but you definitely have to be like, well, okay, how can we figure out how to do this? In this case, I was like, oh my God, this is a great idea. So great choice. So I want to call him the Deliberator, right? And he always knows the right way to go. Like it's kind of like a navigational power. You know what I mean?
Like his
he always
intuition
knows.
is always on point.
Yes, correct. Yeah, I like it. Which is really like from a superhero standpoint, super good because like that could be everything from like we should find some vibranium to kill Ultron, or it could just be like I'm gonna move my head because if I don't, a bullet is gonna be over there. So it'd be,
or if the typical like let's split up in this cave to see where they went, he could just be like, no, let's not split up and just go this way because it's this way.
I like the idea that he always makes the right choice, but sometimes it's everybody knows the right choice already. Like I don't think we should split up. It's like, yeah, we know. You should never split up.
All right, thank you, the Deliberator, aka Martin Sanchez, for being a Patreon subscriber. We love you so much. I mean, I essentially already said mine, but I'll just give you more publication details on it. So, Poison Ivy, Cycle of Life and Death. It was I believe it was a miniseries. It had 6 issues or so. There's 1 volume. The art is by Clayman, which, if you know his artwork, it's amazing. And it was written by Amy Chu. Harley Quinn's in it. Catwoman's in it. The gals get back together. It's a really good look into her breaking good and her really kind of navigating that and finding that way. Also, her costume update is really cool. I like how she has like black where her skin usually shows. So you have like this really cool contrast between this like ivy green and then this black. So it's really cool. And her bright red hair. So cool. I just like the way she looks. So, yeah.
All right. So my pick is going to be Marvel Knights. Just start at number 1. The writer was Chuck Dixon. Artist is Ed Barretto. It's basically Daredevil and Punisher have to co-lead a team that includes Dagger, Black Widow, and Shang-Chi. So there's a lot of tension there on trying to rein each other in.
Like it. Love it. And last, but certainly, probably... No, I'm just kidding. What's your share?
Oh, thanks a lot, butthole. Anyway, okay, so my pick is Avengers Academy, number 1. It's so... Look, I mean, honestly, by the way, this is the one that came out in like 2010. I think they've done a few since then. And I'm going to spoil it a little bit, but I just to sell this because it really is the concept that does it. So it's like a lot where they have... or this story's kind of been done a lot where it's like a bunch of young heroes that are being trained. And they all start classes and everything like that, and they're being trained by characters like Hank Pym and things like that. But what they find out, they're like, why did they pick us? They think at first the whole point is that they're, young, promising stuff. Mm-hmm. It turns out they're all connected to supervillains or have really fucked up backstories. Yep. Like they start trauma bonding. They're like, wait, what happened to you? Oh, your dad was killed? And they realize they all fit the profile for supervillains. Yep. And that the Avengers have all found like, these sort of like, oh no, these are stories that could go bad. So they decide to train them. And it's this awesome sort of like, oh, they have the makings of a villain story, but can they go good if they have the right mentorship? And it's a solid series. By the way, the writer is Christos Gage, and Mike McCone does the original art. That the title moves around a lot, the art. But man, I mean, it really, in terms of the concepts we've been talking about, it really explores it very well. So I would check that out.
Hell yeah! So that's it. It's a little bit of a long one. A little bit of a long one, but you guys stuck through. All right. See you in 2 weeks, guys.
Thanks for listening. Follow us on Facebook, Instagram, or Twitter at the Fantom Zone Pod for more podcast updates.